In this country, we believe that there should be freedom for all, even though not all of us believe in it. Join Tom and Chase as they explore politics, economics, and everything else that threatens your individual liberty. This is the Free For All Podcast.
Okay, we are live. Free For All, episode 8.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I started taking notes for this week's show, I think on Tuesday, and that was 2 days into the week, and there was already like a shitstorm unfolding. Coca-Cola was being accused of like reverse racism. I don't know why the word reverse is there, because racism can be directed towards literally anybody, but uh, they were being accused of reverse racism due to this whole anti-white diversity training that they make new employees go through like right after they're hired, because a whistleblower posted screenshots of this anti-white slideshow that was being used in the course or whatever, and posted them on, I think, Twitter. And then we had also more blatant and outright hypocrisy coming from the Biden administration, reopening these migrant facilities at the border to put an estimated 700 to 1,000 more kids in cages. And that comes after Biden repeatedly criticized Trump for it during the debates before he was elected. And I haven't seen a single word from any of these stupid crackhead leftists who were so upset 6 months ago and got this whole Save the Children hashtag trending on Twitter or whatever. They're nowhere to be found. And then amidst of all of that happening, we just saw last night, so that would have been Thursday night, that we're bombing Syria again, which is the absolute last thing that we wanted to hear. But in the words of our clown in chief, America is back.
Yeah, and it's all pretty funny because all of these things are just leftists doing exactly what they blame other people for doing, and it just gets swept under the rug, and it's crazy. And this is just kind of what America's going to be back to. It was before. It was the media is going to be all critical of what the government and what obviously like right-wing corporations do, but now since all these corporations are left-wing, all these big banks that people were targeting with what's it called, March on Wall Street or whatever, they've all had like the gay pride and stuff, and now it's just leftism in the corporations, leftism in the government, and the media is not going to report on it. And they were just going crazy over Trump and making stuff up even, and now they are gonna not even care when things are blatant like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to start off talking a little bit about this whole Coca-Cola situation, because it got swept under the rug fairly fast. You know, I think a couple people started talking about it, and you know, got some videos and some information out on it pretty quickly. But other than that, it kind of got swept under the rug, and I don't think people paid much attention to it. So, you know, like before, I was talking about, they get accused of this whole reverse racism deal, which is hilarious because it feeds directly into what we've talked about in other episodes that we've put out. That the left wants to talk about, you know, being anti-racism, but they're obviously the most blatantly racist people that exist. So
Yeah.
I'm quoting one of these slides here that was posted. So, and quote, "To be less white is to be less oppressive, be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be less ignorant, be more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, and break with white solidarity." And it's hilarious because this first quote is the most blatantly racist thing mentioned, because they're attributing all of these negative traits simply to being white. And if you take that quote with what it's implying, so you're taking the opposite of what they're telling you to be, they're basically telling white people that just by the very nature of their skin color, that they're oppressive, arrogant, defensive, ignorant, cocky, and desensitized, and just overall white supremacists.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny. Like it says, like oppressive and arrogant, so it's pretty much like a loaded statement. But then the rest of it, be less defensive, be less ignorant, be more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, break with white solidarity. It's like it's trying to make you just roll over, and it's trying to make you. It's just saying roll over and accept our agenda, accept intersectionality, accept all the diversity, regardless of whether or not it has negative consequences. And it's just kind of funny because it not all white people had it the same in U.S. history. When you're talking about, especially in the 19th century, Irish and Italians, all these different immigrants coming from Europe to the United States had hard time finding jobs, and people talk about immigrants now having a hard time, and obviously these people had to learn a different language and stuff, and a lot of people make this argument that the immigrants then were a lot harder working or whatever than the immigrants now. I don't know whether or not that's true, um, but it's the same thing. They weren't treated well when they came here, and Irish and Italians and just other Catholics, they weren't treated well, and a lot of examples like Irish need not apply when coming to get jobs in America, and just having to work on the railroads with the Chinese. It wasn't a good pass for them.
Yeah, so that's in reference to the first quote. And so this second quote was, in the US and other Western nations, white people are socialized to feel that they are inherently superior because they are white. The research shows that by age 3 to 4, children understand that it is better to be white. And that whole second quote essentially feeds into another point that we've made before this, which is that the left likes to falsely give white people this authority and power that they don't possess. Like, they're basically saying that white people are inherently superior to any other race, when that's in fact not the case. And simply even claiming that this is somehow uh, diversity training or whatever, it's literally the most racist thing in and of itself.
That's true. They want you to be every color but white. They're like, I guess white. Well, I guess in terms of science, white is the absence of color, but uh, or is it all colors? I forget. I think white is all colors.
Yeah.
So white people, I guess, are the most diverse. So they have it completely backwards. But they talk about white people. They say white people are like it's one solid group, and like I was just saying, Irish and Italians. A lot of white people they used to not agree. And look at World War I, World War II. It's well, mostly all white people fighting together in Europe, and well, not fighting together, fighting against one another and killing one another. So it's just crazy. It's like they want to back you further and further into a corner and make sure everybody's backed into a corner, and then just attack you from there. And all of this kind of has BLM undertones, and it's just kind of like pushing the blame to others or something like that in a similar fashion. And like I said, just trying to push you in a corner, break you apart, or break the family apart, or whatever. And that way they can divide and conquer. That way the government or whoever's telling them to do this, because obviously they're getting money from these big donors, like I won't name any names, but hedge fund managers and stuff like that. And there's some sort of agenda here. And obviously some of the BLM leaders have said openly that they're Marxist, and Marxists are fundamentally opposed to the family. They think that, you have state comradeship, basically, in one overarching opinion. And it's just crazy that, I mean, it's kind of, what I'm saying is kind of like a slippery slope argument that, Coca-Cola is just saying we need to be diverse or whatever. But, being less white it's saying be less white is just crazy. I mean, what point are we at in reality that people are telling you not to be, what it's like you said, you say it's a crazy term, but reverse racism, like if you go back to, when slavery was a thing, people might have said be less black and maybe you won't be a slave or something. And that might have been a thing. I don't know. But now they're saying be less white, and that's, although nobody's being a slave, they basically want to sort of demote you or say that you have less weight in society or less of an opinion because you are white.
Yeah, so we had that whole deal with this whole reverse racism thing with Coca-Cola. And then, kind of while all of that was going on, we had this whole story come out that these migrant facilities were being reopened at the border. So here we are, some 6 months later, on the topic of kids in cages, because a certain Joe Biden, who consistently just ripped Trump for separating immigrant children from their families and then putting them in these detention centers, is now doing the exact same thing with a facility that Trump opened and closed under his administration. And it's like, how much of a hypocrite do you have to be to just shame and ridicule somebody for putting kids in cages and then essentially just turning around and reopening a facility that Trump had already shut down just to do the same thing that you ridiculed him for doing? And it's like, what's funny about this is that Jen Psaki, we've talked about her before, Biden's press secretary, was actually like asked about this, and she says they're simply reopening these facilities as an overflow. But then she goes on to say that their end goal is to reunite them with their families, as if that also isn't what Trump said. So, like, the fact that they even spin it that way is hilarious, because it's the exact same thing that the prior administration did, but now all of a sudden, because they're the ones that are in power, it's okay. And we found out, the first story, it was phrased like it was only one detention center, and so we found out that first one was in Texas, but then there was also a facility in our home state of Florida that they've also basically reopened for the same exact purpose. So it's like, it's not just one. There's multiple facilities. Like, I don't even think they'll stop at two. I think there will be more, and they'll just try to sweep it under the rug.
They should just put them all in California, or put them all. And people joke about putting a wall around California.
California is a detention center.
But people joke, yeah, and people joke about putting a wall around California. But ironically, they should, because if you can get into there as an illegal, nobody's going to care, nobody's going to do anything, and nobody's going to ask you for official government papers. They're just going to give you whatever state government papers that they can give you, probably. But I mean, at least I've heard that the system is that lax, and everybody wants to give you welfare and hand it out, and the checks are easy to get, and the system is super well oiled for those who don't want to do anything. But not only Biden was really railing against Trump, it was obviously almost every Democrat. I mean, it just becomes a thing where the farthest left talking point is where the perspective from where the Democrats are sitting, and they're just going to keep railing on Trump on the campaign trail for the cheap points and saying, oh, Trump's putting kids in cages or whatever. And obviously there were a bunch of Democrats against this. And do you think that, I mean, obviously since Biden thinks it's okay, he's doing it. Do you think that these other Democrats are going to try to impeach Biden? These Democrats that are, a lot of them, like senators like Klobuchar and stuff, are they going to go after Biden? I don't think so. They're just going to let slide under the rug. It's just back to business for them. Aside from that, I mean, illegal immigration was up under Trump compared to Obama. So let's see if Biden will live up to saving face like that as well, like Obama, while doing what they accuse others of, while doing exactly what Biden and Obama accused Trump of, putting people in cages and detaining people at the border, because obviously Trump let more people through. And I don't know if that's hypocrisy on Trump's part, or if illegal immigration was just up in anticipation of there being a wall, but who knows? I mean, another thing is, if Trump had built the wall, there would be less kids in cages, and there would be, who says there would be? I don't think there would be all legal immigration would be done. There's obviously no way to completely stop that. There's problems with like visas and stuff like that, but it would obviously stop some sort of people coming over. It'd be some sort of deterrent. and there would be less kids in cages, like I said. So it's almost like they're setting it up to be where we have open borders, and then the people just come in and they detain whoever the hell they want and act like they have law and order, but at the same time there's illegals pouring in, but also at the same time there's people rotting away in these detainment facilities. But as long as there's states like as long as there's like welfare, and there's states like California lying to do anything to loophole this federal immigration law and creating sanctuary cities and the like, I don't want all this illegal immigration, and even a lot of immigration on the massive scale. It's just a lot of it, even if it may or may not proportionally be these immigrants that are taking all these, federal grants and other things that the states get, and or like state things like welfare and such. Um, I don't want to have to deal with that, because it just seems like a magnet for people to want to come in that want to suck off these systems. And people just have to understand the right wing argument, and that's what it is like, I'm a libertarian, and a lot of libertarians are open border, but I just think that in Endgame that might be fine if all property is privatized, but when you have public property, it just becomes this issue where people can come and suck off of it, and they don't even have to pay taxes because they just come and they move. Just think about things like the highways and things like parks, or like homeless facilities and stuff like that. Like, if you have just a bunch of people coming into your country and taking that up, and it's public stuff that they don't have to pay for, then it becomes an issue. And I think that in our current environment in the United States, where we have so many freebies, and in certain states, obviously, like California, they have tons of freebies, and they give you an easy ride if you want to just come in. Uh, it's becoming a huge issue, and if you talk to people from there that understand even the slightest bit about it, that they know that this is a huge issue. And like I said, I don't really care about like the people or whatever, but in this sort of climate with the laws and stuff that we have now, it's obviously a magnet for the wrong type of people to come in, and getting thrown into that mix is obviously going to be some of the wrong people. And even like Trump said, they're not sending their best, and he was misquoted on this. He was, oh, they're rapists or murderers or whatever, but he was just saying they're like, there's some of them, they're not sending their best. That's just what happens when you have loopholes in the system, like people going through, getting around like broken fences and having shitty border security, to where, and a welfare magnet, to where you know the best aren't always going to be sent. The best will be sent if we have free market capitalism, and the people can duke it out for the best jobs with the best qualifications, not the people who want to just come in and suck off the system. So that's just the right wing argument, and people need to understand that. And that's how the country is for the time being. And a lot of leftists and even a lot of libertarians need to come to the reality that, and even some conservatives, a lot of conservatives that are these rhinos, just need to come to this reality that it is a real slippery slope. That's not like logical fallacy in this circumstance. Like, it is a real slippery slope to be opening the borders, and might I add, blowing up other countries, which is one of the next things we wanted to get into.
Yeah, we were talking about, we mentioned Syria. So it's honestly not a surprise to either me or Tom that once again we're bombing Syria. Me and Tom have talked about this numerous times before Biden got elected, whether that was going to happen or not. And it took, I guess, 36 days in office, or 36 or 38, something like that, for Joe Biden to decide that he was going to bomb Syria. And this comes as like he's doing these whole multi-trillion-dollar weapons deals with like private weapons contractors like Raytheon. That he said he wanted to decrease the size of the military industrial complex, and here he is, signing literally every military deal that comes across his desk. It's hilarious, and it's completely hypocritical, and there's no surprise there either. That Biden campaigned really heavily on being anti-war, and promised that he wouldn't be continuing any wars or starting any new ones. Yet he basically chooses to bomb Syria, much like his good friend Barack Obama did for 8 years of his presidency, which, like we said before, is what he meant by tweeting "America is back."
Yeah. And it's crazy, and they need the total collusion of the media to just slip that under everybody's nose. But I mean, obviously, I just said it. Like the Democrats are everything the Republicans that they say the Republicans are. Like, you talk about war hawks. The Republicans used to always be painted as these war hawks. You had the Bushes, later term Reagan, and all this other stuff. But these Democrats now are all war hawks. Like you were saying about Obama, Bill Clinton, just going further back in history, FDR, even Woodrow Wilson, and LBJ, all liberals that, or I wouldn't say liberals, but all Democrats that were huge war hawks. But it just seems to be a theme that Democrats are war hawks, and it kind of becomes like almost the go-to party for people who think they are liberal or whatever. But I don't even think that they know that they're voting for people that are war hawks, which is ironic. And it's just crazy that people vote for these people and then they straight up go and bomb Syria. And I think that people are starting to get pissed off about that already. But just for example, like talking about America being back, it's not just Democrats. It takes the collusion of Democrats and Republicans meeting in the middle and compromising. And the one thing they agree on is war, and not just in Congress, but the presidency. And we haven't declared war since World War II. We've just gone into these other wars pretty much illegally. But since 2001, the excuse for being in the Middle East, they said we can't leave the Middle East because, quote, they did 9/11, 2003, Saddam has WMDs, 2007, Iraqi civil war, 2009, we've almost won, 2011, we just can't pull out now. Sounds kind of funny. 2013, they're too unstable. 2013, they're too unstable. 2015, now the problem's ISIS. And 2017, now the problem's Assad. 2019, we got to stay to protect the Kurds. And 2020, stay tuned. And now we don't even know.
Yeah, but I wanted to go back for a second because we mentioned Barack Obama, and that's I want everybody to understand that that's he's who a lot of these leftists learned from, because the most Republicans by now, and this kind of goes into my next point that I was going to make, but most Republicans by now kind of understand that these wars in the Middle East have been for oil and not for anything else. And so we've seen a lot of Republicans, I wouldn't say all of them because not all of them understand that yet, but a lot of them have kind of switched to being okay, we're kind of tired of these wars. We want to bring people home. Like we saw Trump was trying to do that, but he didn't succeed in all the different areas he wanted to. But the Republicans are kind of becoming the ones that are anti-war, we're tired of this. And the Democrats, who learned from the Obama administration, have now figured out that if they stay in the wars, they can continue to make money. And that brings me into my next point, because again, like we've mentioned in prior episodes, it comes back to oil, and it comes back to this whole course of action that Biden led with his first day in office, which was canceling the Keystone XL pipeline, which obviously made us once again dependent on foreign oil. And it was obviously a strategic move to be able to go back into Syria for oil because of the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline. And guess which pipeline runs through the middle of Syria? It's the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. So it's very clear that the motive here is oil. And so, we have Biden doing this whole Syria bombing campaign, and this comes as he's running on a platform of putting America first. and yet millions of Americans who have lost jobs because of this whole COVID pandemic, who have been waiting for the relief Biden said would be provided immediately as soon as he got into office, still haven't gotten anything, because instead Biden's worried about bombing a Middle Eastern country within 40 days of his presidency.
And you got to remember that the whole reason why we fight all these Middle Eastern wars is, not only in defense of certain countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia, but to sell weapons, to basically prop up the weapons industry. Like, these politicians are bought off by the weapons industry, and then uh they start these wars, and then more weapons get sold. But then another thing that happens is uh we will sell weapons to other countries. So say if we bring countries into wars, or if we start a proxy war like what's going on in Yemen.
Like the Obama administration sold weapons to ISIS and the Taliban.
Well, not directly to ISIS, but yeah, pretty much just throwing it out blindly to whoever would buy it that said that they were against Assad in Syria. So yeah, they basically throw out these weapons, and what they do is they give quote unquote loans to these countries. They give them loans to uh, do whatever they want with this foreign aid. But if they pay, if they buy weapons with these loans, then they don't have to pay them off. So it's basically a subsidy for these U.S. companies, these weapons makers, to be having these wars, whether the U.S. is fighting in them or somebody else is, because we're just going to be selling them the weapons. And ironically, you're talking specifically about oil. The whole reason why we'd want to attack other countries is not necessarily to capture their oil, because it's not like we're going to go in there always and completely occupy them and then set up oil rigs or whatever. It's to limit the supply of oil, to prop up the price. And because the U.S. has certain agreements with OPEC countries, basically to where the point where they have to sell oil in U.S. dollars, because that's just how it's denominated. And the more that they can pump up the price of oil, the more that they can pump up the US dollar, because more dollars are demanded to buy the oil. So that's one of the main drivers for demand of US dollars, is the price of oil. So, attacking all these countries just randomly, like all these Middle Eastern countries, like Syria, like Iraq with Saddam, and like Libya with Gaddafi. It's almost like it's always. I mean, it just seems fishy every time. It's almost like it's always a check, and like the U.S. is trying to exert its power to maintain its dominance when it comes to currencies, and when it comes to oil.
Yeah, and so obviously everybody should understand by now that the motivation has and always will be oil. And so you have this Qatar-Turkey pipeline that's running through Syria. It's very clear that the motive is oil, and people are still out here tweeting things like, no, we're not going to go to war with the Middle East again. Oh no, how dare you think that Biden would go back to war in the Middle East? Like all these stupid things. As recent as 2 weeks ago, they were saying this stuff. And it's like, it's been so crystal clear to the rest of us what the motive was behind all of this. And the Biden administration is now just out here claiming that the bombings were in response to Iranian-backed militias attacking U.S. forces overseas. But like, yet again, Iran and Syria are both sovereign countries, and that's why they're attacking us. Like, we're literally foreign occupants trying to control other sovereign states. Like, you really can't justify that. And it's sad because they're trying to pass off blame, and like you were mentioning earlier, like all the different things that they've said, like, oh, we'll pull out soon, oh no, it's because of ISIS, oh no, it's because of all these different things. Like, that's just the latest excuse. is that now it's because of an Iranian-backed militia, but it's really not. It's the same. It's the same exact reason we've been over there for like the last 3 decades.
Yeah, anybody who wants to check the balance of power in the Middle East is immediately like shut down. I mean, the balance of power is, and it's so crazy because okay, so obviously like the U.S. is controlling the Americas, and we did a lot in the past couple of decades with shutting down communism in South America and stuff, but in the Middle East as well, we do a lot to support this Israel Saudi duopoly, and it's like it's kind of ironic because you talk about these Israelis always saying people are coming after us for religion and like all this Muslim extremism and people hate Muslims and everything, and Republicans hate Muslims, but look, everybody's up in arms with, or not up in arms with, but just like together in arms with these Saudi Arabians, literally fighting with them together in arms, but hand in hand with them. We're trying to do everything to prop up these two countries, and once you see that that's the motive, it becomes so obvious what the next move is or what the response is going to be, because it's just not everything's random. Not everything is just like the politicians are making the best choices. Obviously, we've seen that. Obviously, people don't trust politicians when you look at polls when they ask that question. People don't think things are getting better year after year. Even if they vote for these people, they don't always think that things are going to get better, which is absolutely crazy. I don't know why, but you just got to see that there's a motive behind everything, and obviously, when Biden's just going to go straight back to war, there's a motive behind that, and it's just kind of funny. Like I was saying before about people vote Democrat because they think they're against the establishment or whatever, but it's just ironic because Biden gets in, and who does he appoint to his cabinet? It's all these, like visa executives and the secretaries of state and stuff like that are generals and stuff, and it's just it's a revolving door. It's just you just go up the chain of government, and it's all swamp creatures, and it's crazy. It's not against the establishment at all, and it's all pro war. It's all pro big government in every single aspect. Whereas Republicans may be pro government in some aspects and maybe not in others. That's debatable, but Democrats are pro war, or I'm sorry, pro government in almost every single aspect, and that includes war, which is one of the number one, feeders and obviously justifications for government is, we have these wars going on. So, what better to unite all the people and not make them question all the debt we're racking up and all the, why people hate us other than just, uniting them.
Just all the other shady stuff that they do.
Yeah, just anything, just like things like what the CIA does. Like they were getting away with tons of stuff in the late 20th century, and it's just because they were using it under the guise of we're fighting communism. And that's just what the next thing is going to be now. Is just they're going to say we're fighting insurrection, or we're fighting we're we're going back. America's back in the Middle East or whatever, and it's just going to bring back uh, the old policy of controlling everything.
And for a lot, like obviously this whole Syria situation pisses you and I off, Tom, but a lot of people that either maybe new to libertarianism or just politics in general, may not have paid attention to this situation at all, in years prior. And there was I listened to a very, very good episode of the Tom Woods Show. This episode aired February 18th. It was episode 1838. He did a background episode on the whole Syria conflict and why the US should stay out of it, pretty much. Yeah, he had Scott Horton, which is another show that you and I both listen to. He had Scott Horton.
Yeah, Scott Horton's great with foreign policy. If you're trying to learn anything about history or whatever, he does tons of interviews with people, and he just knows everything. Like he'll say things, and you don't even half the time can't even follow him if you're not paying. Like if you just tune out for a second. You can't follow what he's saying because he'll get into all these like groups or whatever that you don't understand. But he's a great resource. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, he had Scott Horton on his show, and had him kind of give this whole background lesson on, the whole Syrian conflict, the history behind that, different reasons as to why that issue still continues to exist, the cons basically, because there are no pros, but the cons of staying in that conflict versus stopping the conflict or pulling out or doing whatever. um it was a very short episode. Like you said, Scott Horton he talks very, very fast. He packs a lot of information into what he talks about, and it's very difficult to follow him if you don't pay very, very close attention to what he's saying. So that episode, I think, was only, like 30 minutes or something like that. But really, he dug pretty deep into the whole history behind that conflict and just why we're still dealing with it now.
Yeah, and he'll go through and talk about various other conflicts, and that's just like I said. Once you know the history of these things and like the motives, it just doesn't become surprising. So, like, this is just a repeat story of multiple countries. They're just gonna keep knocking down one after another as a justification or whatever they need to make up to, get paid off as a politician and sell the arms and uh, maintain American dominance. But I mean, I'm an American, and I care that America does well internationally. But obviously, when we do things like this, we're propping up a U.S. dollar that, number one, isn't a really reliable currency that doesn't deserve to be propped up. It should be backed by something. But number two, we're just creating enemies a lot of the time. So especially with like Iraq and Afghanistan, we're not ever going to really uh, solve those issues. And especially, things like the Mujahideen it's just like, it's kind of like an ideology, and it's kind of like, red-blooded Americans or whatever, people that consider themselves patriots, just or like libertarians, just, if somebody came in and was trying to mess with my country, like you were saying, it's just gonna uh I'm not gonna let up, and it's just gonna, constantly agitate me, and I'm gonna want to, fight against that. And that's just things that we're gonna continue running up against, because obviously we're not going into these countries to take them over. We're going into these countries to either control a resource or kind of boss them around and act like, the tagline is democracy. We're going to bring democracy to them. That's all we're going to do. It's like, no, not really. We're going to install whoever the hell we want and tell them to do whatever, and then act like we're great on the stage, on the international stage, so that other countries sign on and agree to do things with us, like the UN.
Yeah, it's like, you're being rescued, please don't resist.
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly what they're doing.
Yep.
And it just seems like these wars in the Middle East just are never ending, and nobody seems to care enough, because they're all for some stupid underlying purpose.
And it's almost gotten to the point, like, and it's pretty funny because like a couple of years ago, there was like a meme like, oh, kids now are turning 18 that are going into a war that's older than them. Like the war was started before they were even born, and that's just kind of wild. And it almost gets to the point where, it pretty much has gotten to the point where people forget about these wars, and it's not on the front page. It's not a big deal, because we don't have a ton of troops fighting there, but we still do drone strikes, and we still sell the weapons and all these other things to provoke the war, or somehow be involved as United States as a country. And I just can't see it getting better.
Well, see, and to the other problem that I have with this is that I don't know if anybody else recalls, but like, under the Obama administration, when we started dealing with this really, really bad ISIS problem, which ISIS is an entirely other story that we're not going to get into right now. But when we had this whole ISIS problem under the Obama administration, we were dealing with terrorist attacks in the continental US. It seemed like it was every other day almost. There's something stupid going on. And what leads a lot of these terrorists to come to the US to carry out these bad attacks like that is basically because these radicals see what the United States does in all these Middle Eastern countries. They get pissed off and say, "Why are you over here meddling in the affairs of my own country or whatever? How dare you?" And they come over here to wreak havoc. And it's like that's going to start happening again the more we do stuff like this. And then it perpetuates the whole gun control argument, because inevitably a terrorist attack happens or another mass shooting, and then they're going to blame guns or whatever and take them away from law-abiding citizens, all because of stuff we're doing overseas. It's a domino effect. Tom and
Yeah.
I, because we look at things deeper than, I guess, average people. I'd like to feel like there are other people like us that are very attached and immersed in what's going on around them or whatever, that they take the time to read up on stuff like this and pay attention and everything. Because the further you dive into topics like this, topics like the Middle East and all these different foreign wars, the more you start to understand that these are just ongoing issues that the government perpetuates so that they can maintain power. Because then from these different things that they perpetuate, like war, they can then create false problems that don't exist, like America having a gun problem, because we don't.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to say something that kind of segues into that. So yeah, like they're gonna and that whole issue with the Middle East and having this reduction, like things like the Patriot Act, to where you do these things in a foreign country, but now as a repercussion, because of the blowback of what these people in these other countries want to, in these Middle Eastern countries, want to do to us, it's going to reduce our freedoms, because people want to sacrifice freedom for safety. So, things like the Patriot Act, things like gun control, like you said, when terrorist attacks start ramping up, the first thing that they're going to say is, we need to take away these guns. But it's funny, because it's just like I was saying on the healthcare episode, that it's any problem, government just makes it worse, and they throw more money at it, and they say, oh, we need to just this time, like, it's going to be better. We're going to try something different, and it's going to be great, and we need more government. Then we're going to throw more money at it, and it doesn't work, and then it just perpetuates on and on and on. And you just keep losing your freedoms, like your freedom to choose insurance and stuff like that. So it's pretty much anything that government does. Like, you give them more money and the more freedom you lose. It's so crazy, and I don't know why people sign on to it.
Yeah. Like, to think that people own property and the government still can tell them whatever they can tell them whatever they want, and the person has to obey, because otherwise they get arrested. Like, to think the government has the power to do stuff like that is just ridiculous. And the fact that we're back in Syria again with no congressional approval is just, it's not surprising at all.
It's bonkers. Like, whatever happened to, like, they talk about, taking an oath to the Constitution, like swearing or whatever. And, like, whatever happened to just anything. Like, there's no rule of law, obviously. Like, what's the point of being extremely, like, pro, like, American government, being like, oh, like, I'm jazzed up, like, I'm super proud of, like, everything America does. Like, it's stupid. Like, I don't, like, I understand why people at a certain, maybe a certain time in American history, might have been duped into fighting wars in foreign countries. But just like now, with everything that's going on, and especially like Trump waking people up to, or at least average people up to, him and Ron Paul up to, like, all these foreign wars and how bullshit they are. I don't really, there's no excuse to really be in the military, or at least like in a position that's fighting foreign wars, because it's just so crazy. You're basically just being a pawn in this crazy game that they don't care if you're dead or alive. It just, they want some macro numbers to go up.
Yeah, it's ridiculous at this point, and I really hope that especially for people that don't understand the history behind this conflict, I really would like y'all to go over to the Tom Woods show and listen to that episode, because it was very I majored in international affairs. That's what my bachelor's degree was in. And I learned a lot about these different Middle Eastern conflicts, a lot about different conflicts America has had in Europe and other areas of the world. But Scott Horton dove very, very deep into that subject, even more so than I had learned in college. So the fact that there was even more to the history of that conflict than I had learned through the educational system, I mean, obviously that's not surprising either, but just the fact that I got as much information as I did in just a 30-minute time span was pretty impressive, and very eye-opening to the backstory behind that conflict. So definitely go and check out that episode. I think that's all we have for you guys this week, but things moved pretty quickly this week. We had a lot of different stuff happen, just over the course of a couple days. So I definitely think the next show will have some more, talking points, some more information that obviously the media doesn't cover a lot of this stuff, or cover it as much as they should, because everything just gets swept under the rug now. But yeah, so we'll be back next week with some more great content for you guys. Until then, y'all be easy.
Peace.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Free For All podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the show to keep up to date with all of the latest content. Peace.